If you're a consultant building a business, you have to read this book. I read it about 2 months ago and it completely transformed how I think about consulting. It made me go, oh, there's a logic to this consulting thing. Like, I'm in control of my own success. I wish I had read this sooner. It's called The Irresistible Consultant's Guide to Winning Clients, which is a bit of a weird title, I know, but I promise this book delivers. It's structured into 6 steps to unlimited clients and freedom. And you know how messy and confusing the process of building a consulting business can be. So it feels nice to get a bit of a roadmap we can follow. So in this video, I'm gonna break down all 6 steps with all the most valuable lessons from this book so you can apply them in your business today. And I've also created a 1-page PDF of the 6 steps so you can reference them in the future, and you can download that for free using the link below. So let's start with step number 1, and we're starting strong because this is already a game changer. If this is the only thing you take away from this book and implement it in your business, you're gonna do fine. And this step is basically about fixing our worldview. Easy, right? Well, fixing our mindset as consultants. You know how we as people are all pretty focused on ourselves? Well, to become a great consultant, we need to flip that and focus on our clients, because consulting isn't about you, it's about them. The author David Fields calls this right side up thinking, and right side up thinking flips your focus from you to them. Now, if that still sounds a little murky, no worries. David has created a handy table for us that teaches us exactly how to think right side up. So the typical consultant mindset is to worry about what prospects think about you. But really, all you need to worry about is what prospects think about themselves. Rather than using outreach approaches you're comfortable with, use approaches they pay attention to. In your marketing materials, don't focus on your capabilities, your approaches, your offerings, your background. Focus on their situation, their problems, their aspirations, and their potential wins. And in conversations, don't talk about your offering or focus on getting business for you. Talk about their world and focus on helping them improve their lives. And your offering shouldn't revolve around your capabilities, your skill set, your experience. It needs to revolve around their needs and their wants. And somehow I found this so freeing to read, that consulting can be and should be all about the client. It makes me fall in love with consulting more because it feels like permission to skip all the status games and bragging and sleazy sales, because it's about serving the client, helping them, solving their problems, not pretending to know everything. And what I really loved in this book is that as the final part of step 1, David talks about building confidence as consultants and how we tend to look for it in the wrong place. Confidence is important because, and I quote, studies at Carnegie Mellon show that people purchasing advice, aka consulting, tend to choose the more confident source even when that source has a poor track record. But we don't need to go looking for confidence within ourselves and believe that we can do it, because that's upside down thinking, where we're focusing on ourselves and our opinion when all that matters is our client's opinion. And there are 3 aspects the book says we should actually base our confidence on: if our offering is powerful, if our capabilities are strong enough, and if our value is proven from our client's perspective. And I love this way of looking at it so much, because we keep the feelings out of it and the pretentiousness and just look at the facts. Is there evidence that clients have purchased what we offer? No? Okay, design a better offering. Yes? Great, that's a reason to be confident. Is there evidence that we have solved our client's problem? No? Okay, do a pro bono project or 2 to get a solid win under your belt. Yes? Great, another reason to be confident. And is there any evidence that our clients value what we do, like positive feedback or a referral? And by the way, negative feedback does not cancel out the good, because we cannot help everyone. And over time, we'll anyway get better at selecting clients who we can really help. So yes, great, another reason to be confident. Now that we are focused on our client and confident based on facts, not feelings, let's move on to step 2. And this step is where David says most struggling consultants get in trouble, which is to maximize your impact and find your killer offering. He says consultants often think that they have a visibility problem, that not enough people know about them and their business, when really what they have is an impact problem. And by that, he basically means a problem with their positioning. And here I think the book gets a little controversial compared to what I hear most consultants preach, because David essentially says that creating your ideal client avatar and trying to attract them to your business is BS because you just made them up, they don't exist, and you should rather go and see what clients are actually out there and accessible to you and eager to work with you. And he calls this fishing where the fish are, which I gotta say makes a lot of sense. And he actually shows us how to find the right pond to fish at and find our killer offering. So there's 4 aspects we need to get right to be successful, which are called the 4 rights: the right people, the right problem, the right solution, and the right time. So let's go through them. The right people are basically the people you can reach, which I was shocked when I read that. Is it really that simple? Well, according to David Fields, it's easier to sell services desired by the people you can reach than it is to find people who desire the services you want to sell, which means that if the people you can reach don't want your offering, he says you should figure out what they want and offer that instead, which is wild if you compare it to what I feel like everyone tells you to do when you start consulting, which is to think about the skills you have to offer and then figure out who will pay for that. If you think about it, that's a consulting equivalent to startups who build a fancy solution and then try to find a problem for it. I just didn't realize that that's what I was doing, which if you don't know, I started out my business offering operations consulting since that's the job I had before. But turns out no one in my network wants to buy operations consulting from me. I checked. Lots of people, however, would love to pay me to help them with their content marketing and digital products. So who should I sell to? The people who I made up in my head, who I can't seem to find anywhere, or the people who are basically throwing money at me to help them? Yeah. Okay, so we've got the right people. Now we need the right problem. And the main advice here, and I know you're not gonna like it, that it's to focus. The core offering you promote needs to be narrower. Because the first thing clients look for is someone who has experience with their specific problem and situation. And the book gives us 2 exercises to figure out the right problem. The first one is fishing for problems, where you basically ask your prospects, what problems have you found so pressing and important that you've actually spent money bringing in outside help to solve them over the past few years? And there's no hypothetical questions here. We need to learn what potential clients have spent actual money on in the past, not what they say they'll do in the future. And the second exercise is called the problem meter, where we rate the problems we found in the first exercise by how frequent, how urgent, and how expensive those problems are. Then we filter for those that are high across the board. Next, we rate our personal skills and ability to address each problem. But only at this point we're allowed to care about our abilities, when we already know that these problems are frequent, urgent, and expensive enough. And finally, we choose our right problem. So the most pervasive, urgent, and expensive problem where we have strong capability. And at this point, David drops my favorite quote of the book: you can always build your skill set, but you can't build client problems. At least you shouldn't build client problems. Next, the right solution. And the main thing we need to understand here is that we don't sell consumer products. This is important because there's one big difference. Most consumer products have a high perceived reliability, which means that consumers usually believe that a product like toothpaste will fulfill its basic promise to clean your teeth. So those products try to differentiate by adding fancy flavors, whitening functions, and fancy sparkles. This is not true for consulting. Most consulting has a low perceived reliability, which means that clients do not believe that most firms will fulfill their basic promise. So buyers of consulting services aren't looking for something different. They're looking for a solution they can rely on. So if clients ask us, why should I hire you rather than a competitor? Our answer shouldn't be because we're so different. It should be because working with us will give you the highest likelihood of achieving your goal and the least chance of something going wrong that could hurt you or the business. And what then is the right solution? It's simple so that the client can understand it. It's easily communicated so that the client can explain it to others and defend it to others if they have to. It's highly relevant, so it helps the client solve the specific problem they have, and it's efficient, which means that it can be delivered reliably with high margin because we have to run a profitable business after all. And the reaction we're going to get from a prospect after we share our solution is, wow, that's surprisingly simple. And then we can go, yes, it's simple, but it's not easy, basically. And finally, we get to the right time, which it's basically impossible to predict if we're approaching a potential client at the right time where this problem is super urgent to them. So So we just avoid this by approaching lots and lots of people, and for some of them, it will be the right time. And now that we have the 4 rights, all that we still need to maximize our impact is a fishing line, which is literally a line of words that we use to fish for clients. Essentially, you want to combine your right client and your right problem into a short statement that immediately gets the attention of the people you can help. Here are some examples of effective fishing lines. I work with IT companies that are underperforming in the Asia Pacific region. I work with B2B manufacturers who are tired of slugging it out for market share. I work with boutique consultancies who want to win more projects from more clients at higher fees. If you're serious about becoming a more successful consultant, you can do this right now. Write down at least 10 possible fishing lines for your business. Pick your top 3 and try them out with prospects over the next couple of months to see which ones attract the most fish. Okay, now that we have our killer offering, we're ready for step 3, build visibility and become known by your prospects. And to become highly visible, we need exposure, but that's not enough. We also need to be perceived as relevant and a source of value. And to help us achieve that, David shares his visibility building toolkit with us, which consists of the 5 marketing musts. And those are writing, speaking, trade associations, digital presence, and networking. You don't have to use all of these, but you should use multiple. I could probably do a whole video on just the visibility building toolkit because it takes up 40 pages in the book. Let me know if you want me to make that, but I will at least share my 3 favorite marketing tips I took from these pages. So the first marketing tip is that everything you put out needs a killer title. Whether you're writing journalist responses, emails, articles, a book, or you're giving a speech or workshop or webinar, you need a great title to make people care enough to listen. Something like Death in a Can, Why Your Pet Food is Killing Your Pets, which is an actual example from the book. You also want to make everything interactive. If you're giving a speech, invite the audience to ask questions and discuss. If you're publishing an article, ask readers to comment their thoughts. The reason this matters is that you want to build a highly engaged network. You don't need millions of clients. You need a few clients who have a lot of trust in you. So if you have the option between engaging more deeply with fewer people or more shallow with more people, always choose the deeper, more personal engagement. And finally, don't worry about giving away your IP, your intellectual property. And I think this is a really important point because I see consultants all the time who I can tell are holding back with their content and say something like, I have a method for helping you, and if you want to find out what it is, come and work with me. And that's just not valuable content. So people are going to stop reading your work if you always meet them with the paywall halfway through. As the book puts it, no amount of content can chase away a big consulting gig. You know, if the problem can be solved with an article, was it even worthy of hiring a consultant in the first place? Or were you basically just scamming people? And since this channel is literally focused on building a digital presence as a consultant, I'm also going to share what David considers the 5 most important digital presence tactics for consultants, which are: number 1, your website. And I hope we can say together at this point, it's not about you, it's about your clients. So the guiding questions for what to put on your website should be, what do my prospects really want to know? What's important to them? And I think as consultants, we really need to hear this, because how many consultant websites have you seen that are completely overloaded with information, and at the same time, you still don't have a clue what they can do for you? And the second tactic is periodic content, like a blog, podcasts, email newsletters, where the main goal is to keep your name in clients' minds. And I can confirm this works because it's happened many times that I send a newsletter or post on LinkedIn, and people who I've already talked to many times go, oh yeah, right, you exist. And by the way, there's this thing you could really help me with. And the only reason they reach out is because it was the right time. You know, they have this urgent problem, and I happen to remind them that I help people solve that problem. Next, we have one-off content like articles, white papers, detailed infographics, videos, ebooks, where the main goal is to build your reputation as a knowledgeable expert and thought leader, and to generate clients, where I again agree that it is so valuable and effective for building trust to create these deep, long-form pieces of content. And I would rather spend the time to create one proper piece that I can proudly share with as many people as possible and know that it will really help them, rather than creating short-form content that's fast to make, fast to consume, fast to forget, and doesn't leave a lasting impact. Then the fourth tactic is webinars, where David says the hardest part is getting attendees. So you definitely need a killer title, and you need to market this. I've only ever done one webinar which had 15 attendees, and one of them did end up becoming my client. So it definitely works. And yeah, I should do more of these. And finally, we have social media, which the book says the only social media outlets worth focusing on currently are LinkedIn and Twitter. I would probably remove Twitter from that list and add YouTube if you want to count that as social media. But I think he's pretty spot on with the advice that your content needs to be specific and relevant. So be insanely focused and specific with your content and use it to quickly establish your reputation as a source of value to new digital contacts. Okay, and what if nothing is working? Your visibility building efforts aren't bringing in clients. Well, to quote the book, visibility building takes time. For most consultants, your pipeline is a reflection of the business development work you did 6 to 9 months ago. But he also has a solution for that. If you have no work, you can supplement it with pro bono work and subcontracting. And why would you do that? Well, work begets work. If you do some work, any work, you're more likely to get more work, and it boosts your confidence and reputation, which I can confirm it feels discouraging not to have any clients, and it made a huge difference to just be able to say, I'm working with a client, I'm helping them solve this problem, and I'm getting them results, even if they're not paying for it. And how much time should you devote to marketing and building visibility? According to the book, if you aren't overloaded with clients and projects, use every free moment, and if you're swamped with work, at least 20% of your time. Now that we know how to build visibility, we can move on to step 4, which is called connect, create relationships and opportunities. David Fields says that relationships equal wealth, which makes me panic a little inside because this is definitely not my forte, but the book does make me feel more like relationship building is a learnable skill. I just still have to learn it. And there are 3 parts to learn here: creating relationships, nurturing relationships, and leveraging relationships. So how do we create relationships? Well, apparently your most reliable and productive source of new relationships and clients should be introductions and referrals from existing clients. And if that isn't happening regularly, we should check if there's something wrong with our project quality, and check if we're actually asking for referrals and introductions, which apparently we should be doing all the time, but not asking for a sale, just for an interesting connection. We can ask something like, who have you run into recently who's intriguing, creating change, or shaking things up? I'll be honest, I'm not convinced, but I'm gonna test this and report back. Now, of course, David also has a handy table for us with the do's and don'ts of creating relationships, and I gotta say, I love a book with tables. So be brave, be generous, be genuine, be interesting, share your IP, have a memorable fishing line, follow up, always ask for an introduction, and smile. In person, on the phone, and even in writing. Don't start the relationship off selling, try to prove how smart you are, abandon a contact, sell before you've established trust, or give up on building relationships. Boom. And just like that, we'll be killing it on the creating relationships front. Now, how do we nurture those relationships? A lot of people tell us that we should constantly be adding value to our relationships, and David says that's not true because this adds too much pressure and it's actually self-serving, and the person will know that we're not genuine and treat the relationship as transactional. So instead, we should continue to nurture the relationship while being alert for opportunities, which, I don't know, doesn't sound that much better to me. But anyway, to make sure we don't get overwhelmed nurturing too many relationships, there's a handy segmentation exercise for us in the book that works like this. First, you segment your prospects by relationship strength. So people with whom you have a strong relationship get an A, decent relationships get a B, and everyone else where you have their contact but no real relationship gets a C. Then you segment your prospects by influence. People who can hire you directly get a 1. Anyone who can influence the decision to hire you but doesn't have the authority to bring you in gets a 2, and everyone else gets a 3. And the people you should nurture are the A1s, B1s, and A2s, which he calls your network core. And you should reach out to them via email at least once a quarter and call them at least twice a year. Ugh. Really? And then your network periphery you should basically include in your mass outreach like newsletters and send them an annual email. And this exercise is a lot of work, but according to David, it pays off. Okay, David. And finally, how do we leverage those relationships we just nurtured? There's one important rule to learn about, which was a massive aha moment for me, and that is that the world of relationship building is governed by social norms, and the world of selling is governed by market norms. And when those those two collide, we get in trouble and ruin relationships. So we need to keep the two separate. And if we want to shift the conversation from nurturing to a potential consulting engagement, we need to employ a method that David dramatically calls the turn. And it sounds like this. Would you be open to a separate conversation where we talk about your business and explore whether my firm can help you achieve your goals? The critical elements here are separation, that we will talk about it in a separate conversation, and agency, that we give the other person a choice. Now, it doesn't actually have to happen on a different day. They might just say, sure, let's do it right now. But there's a clear and consensual switch from social norms to market norms. And the right time to use the turn would be if a contract brings up a specific issue that matches your offering. But you don't need to do this if they explicitly ask you for your help, or if the purpose of the meeting is already to discuss working together. In that case, you can directly jump to step number 5, which we are now ready for. And this is to become the obvious choice and emerge as an irresistible solution. So to do this, we first have to understand how clients choose. There's basically 6 pillars of consulting success. The client needs to know, like, trust, need, want, and value you. And of these, the rational pillars are know, need, and want. But the pillars that actually carry the most weight are, in this order, trust, value, and like. Essentially, clients choose the consultant they trust the most. And what does trust really mean? Well, David has visualized this with the trust triangle. So to trust you, clients want to know that you're thinking of me, you'll help me, and you won't hurt me. So now that we know how clients choose, what they look for, how do we make sure to fulfill that? I'm glad you asked, because David, of course, has a process for us, which is called a context discussion, where we do a discovery with a prospect and ask a bunch of questions to make sure we understand them better than anyone else does. But not just any questions. There's 6 topics we need to cover during a context discussion. First, situation, where we investigate why the prospect is looking for help, how the project fits in strategically with what the company is doing, what the catalyst for the project is, because there's always a catalytic event and we need to uncover it. We can ask questions like, what's changed? Why now? What have you already done? And why do you need me? And you might be scared that the prospect will go, you know what? I don't actually need your help. But it's more likely that they will start justifying why they need to bring you in. The second topic is desired outcomes, where we ask questions like, what's the ultimate outcome you're hoping for from this initiative? What will be different then versus where you're now? And if we achieve that, how are you then better off? Here it's important that we don't just accept the deliverables as an answer, but dig deeper to find the actual outcomes behind those deliverables that will make the client happy. Third, we have indicators of success, where we want to get specific so that the client starts to picture success and can really feel it. You can ask questions like, how will we measure success? How will you know if the project has been successful? Then number 4, perceived risks and concerns. Ask things like, what are all the things that could go wrong if you hired me? What do you see as the key risks? And what are your concerns about doing this project? And resist the urge to address these concerns, because we need to stay focused on the client during this conversation. And we can address all of those things in the proposal. The 5th topic is value, where we basically want to calculate the actual value that the project will have for the client with specific numbers. So we need to ask for all the figures that we need to calculate this. And the last topic is parameters, like timing, budget, people, other issues that affect the scope and approach. And this context discussion lays the foundation for your success and makes the last step much easier, which is propose, negotiate, and close, and enjoy the payoff. And I love this quote right here. Closing isn't something you do. Closing is the result of everything you've already done. But that doesn't mean we can mess it up. So it's a good thing that David has a 2-stage proposal process for us. Stage 1 of the process is to agree to the context. So what we want to do here is summarize the highlights of our discovery conversation into a context document and craft them into a persuasive story. And as a guiding theme, we can basically use this quote by Blair Warren. People will do anything for those who encourage their dreams, justify their failures, allay their fears, confirm the suspicions, and help them throw rocks at their enemies. So for example, in the situation section, we confirm the client's suspicions by stating what the problem is, and then we sneak in this genius sentence that makes all the difference. Given the situation caused by a force outside of the client's control, it's almost unavoidable that this problem has occurred. Basically, we write a sentence that justifies their failures and throws rocks at their enemies. And we send this document to the decision maker and ask for their agreement so that we can go ahead with creating the proposal proposal. And then stage 2 of this process is the proposal. And the secret to a killer proposal is, of course, right side up thinking, because say it with me, the proposal isn't about you, it's about the client. And there are 3 guidelines for a perfect consulting proposal. First, focus on their outcomes, not your tasks. So we want to give only enough detail to create credibility and support our value. And when in doubt, give less detail and they'll ask for more if they need it. Second, provide reassurance. We want to anticipate their objections, quiet their fears, and mitigate their perceived risk. And third, offer alternatives. So basically, we want to present choices for different combinations of approaches and terms, because this increases the chances that one of these alternatives matches what they actually want. Now, there's a dedicated chapter on pricing and fee structure in this book, which would blow up this video to discuss all of it. Maybe again, I can make a dedicated video on pricing, but here are 2 quick pricing tips from the book. First, find out what the budget is up front so that your proposal is at least in the right ballpark. And 2, trust your gut, but also don't let fear hold you back from earning higher fees. Now, there's a good chance we'll also have to negotiate with the client. And my 2 favorite tips from the book on this are to always come prepared to any negotiation with a handful of traits in mind that could add value for the client, and to use a strategic delay after the client brought up concern. Rather than jumping into addressing this concern, we should instead get the client to lay out all of their concerns, get it all out there, and then we can strategically address the whole picture and, for example, get anything easy out of the way right away to build positive momentum for the more difficult issues. And then when all of that is out of the way, we can ask the client to sign the proposal and send it back to us. And as soon as we win the project, there's one final rule, and that is to make dust fly right away, because this is the time where the client is most likely to feel buyer's remorse. Should I have signed this? Was it the right choice? Is this going to work out? So you want to reassure them by taking a very noticeable step, like sending a project launch letter, setting up a project portal, or sending out contact information for the team, or something like that. Just make it clear that the project is in motion and valuable activities are underway. Now, if you're using these steps to grow your consulting business, you want to make sure you're not sabotaging your success by making any of these 5 common mistakes I observed with consultants, especially when they're trying to grow their business online. So watch this video next to make sure these mistakes aren't holding you back as you're leveling up as a consultant.